my pleasure because sorry, because we are here to learn from each other. There's so much I don't know about your world. I want to know how reading and writing is done in your side of the planet. But let me tell you something that I work on, both at my university and at my organization, Online World of Learning, which stands for OWL for short. When I started at Temple University back in 2010, that was about 12 years ago, I was given the opportunity to teach academic writing. Now, I thought I knew a lot about academic writing until that one class, that my first class that I taught. I was, during that time, in the middle of my PhD, I was still writing my dissertation. And that was the reason why I was so confident. I was like, oh, I'm doing it every day. I can teach it. No, that was a dead ringer. I realized that knowing how to write and teaching how to write are two different things. You may be very professional writer, but that does not make you a passionate or a compassionate teacher of writing. And the reason being, writing is such an abstract phenomena. It's a very abstract skill. You don't have everything down. It's not tangible. It's not something that you can read, you can understand. It all comes from your head. You have to learn to tell somebody how to build a writing project from a simple thought all the way to the final draft. Now, there's a lot of things that are going in there. As instructors, we need to figure those things out first. And then teaching is a different ballgame altogether. So that was my experience with writing. I had two choices. My two choices were I could give up on writing completely because students had such difficult questions. They were genuine questions, but they were difficult. I had never thought about them. It took me years to figure each one out because I never looked at writing from a student's point of view. I could never imagine the real struggles they face, both as ESL students as well as ESL writers. And it was time to flip the table around and ask them, how do you think I can teach you better? What do you think I should teach you first? And then it was 12 years of constant learning from them, with them. And today, I think I'm not very confident, but I think I can tell you that I have figured few things out here and there, but writing still remains a big mystery because there are so many aspects to it. There's so many dimensions. And I'm still getting there. I'm still learning. I've not learned it all. But it would be awesome to hear your thoughts about writing, to talk to you and to see how you perceive writing today. Let's come to reading. Reading was always my first love. My MPhil dissertation was on reading. And I felt I know how to teach reading better than I know how to teach writing. So my connection with reading was far more simple than my connection with writing. And again, reading is essential. You don't have to be told. I think you already know. But the way reading has to be done in the ESL classroom or in a with a purpose so that learners can continue to be reader on their own, even when the teacher is not there. That's a different thing. There's a lot going on there as well. So here I am today waiting to listen to your first question. Or give me suggestions as to what you want me to talk about first. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Any suggestions? What I could be talking about first? Reading or writing? I agree, Emmanuel. Writing is one of the most difficult tasks. Let me ask you this question, Emmanuel. What makes you think that? What makes writing so difficult? Please talk about reading first. Please talk about writing first. Okay, let's start with reading first. What are some of the challenging aspects of reading for you as teachers? For you as teachers? Yep, I'm talking about reading. Just let me know what's the most difficult aspect of reading. It's a discussion. So you need to turn your microphone on and you need to talk to me. I'm not making a presentation. I'm not Saturday morning, I'm not here to teach you. I'm here to be with you, talk to you, learn from you, learn together. So give me a list of difficult aspects of reading. You can either turn on your microphone and talk, or you can just put them in the chat box.
Okay, so we have a hand up there from Madame Doreen.
Yes, thank you, Doc. Reading with the level of students I teach and where they come from, most of their problem comes from not being able to identify the sounds. So when they are reading, they have to pause quite a bit. So it comes with a lot of mockery from their classmates. So some of them will just coil up and not try at all. So sometimes being able to identify the sounds and how you pronounce the word becomes a difficulty for them.
That's a wonderful question. That often happens at the beginner stages, or are you saying they're very advanced students, but there are some words they're still not able to figure out?
Most of the time, the problem is at the beginner stage. But in some areas, especially the rural areas, where the problem is not addressed at the beginner level, it travels all the way to the high school level. And it's compounded when a lot of their learning materials are even more now. So they are overwhelmed with the material, and sometimes they end up not wanting to try at all. They just give up.
Yeah, I understand. We do have that problem. Some students do come with different backgrounds. There are many ways to go about it. I think if, as a teacher, if you want them to continue learning, there's something called differentiation. Differentiated instruction or education, we have it very commonly prescribed and applied at the school level, K to 12 classes. So there are 3 streams. Take for example, 4th grade. 4th grade has 4 streams. So 4 streams means there are kids who are reading below their level. So they have some of these common problems, like, there's the words are not clear. They cannot identify the sound letter combination all the time. And it affects their both comprehension and confidence. And then there are students who read on grade level, who are better than grade level, and those who are gifted. I just wanted to give you an example. A differentiated instruction can be applied even within the classroom setup. And I think you should take these students, form a group for them, and give them a little bit more scaffolding. I believe you speak French. French is one of the languages in Ghana, am I right? So English is not there.
English is our official language, so that is for every school-going child. There are just a few number of people who are learning French compared to the English, yes.
Okay, all right. So the funny thing about English, just as the funny thing about French, is the letter and words, the letter and sound have no connection because we borrowed words from all over the world, and all words ended up being very different. We have anglicized them, but we haven't done a very good job of them. With these students, there is no shortcut. There is only one way to do it, is sit down, identify, they have to learn words one by one. And I think if you teach them in a differentiated atmosphere where, all right, what's the word? Let's try and read it together. There is so much of scaffolding that they need. They're not definitely reading at grade level. So probably avoiding answering comprehension question. I don't know what kind of things you do at your level, but it has to be comprehension question. If they don't read very well, they're probably not able to identify comprehension questions very well. I would say go slow with them. They need the training first in identifying every sound, word, coordination. Go with that, scaffold that until they're ready. Then my other thought is, do you notice that this problem is impeding their comprehension? Do you think that it's not just the confidence problem, but it's also the comprehension problem? Or do you think they read pretty okay? It doesn't make a difference to them?
It makes a difference. Those who are able to read and identify the sounds and the words, if you give them an assignment, they're actually able to produce a fairly good presentation compared to those who cannot identify the words they are reading. So it affects their comprehension very much.
Yeah, that's something that has already been backed by all the research that is currently going on in reading. It's a very fascinating research, and that's what we have found. If at a grassroots level, the words are not clear, or they don't understand the local meaning, they may understand the overall text, but it always makes it difficult for them to comprehend the little minor details in the local areas of reading. Yeah, so I can give you an example of how differentiated instruction works. Allopathic medications, like the one that is a gift of science and pharmaceutical companies produce it. It's like one pill can cure all kinds of pains, right? If you have pains and aches, and it's for everyone. It's for people in Ghana, people in America, people in New Zealand, everywhere, right? Same painkiller, no matter what your pain is, just take it, numb your nerves, you're good to go. That's not how traditional medication works. Traditional medication tries to identify, all right, tell me, where's your problem? Oh my God, those annoying questions. Where's your problem? Is it in the head? It's in the back of the head. So identifying the problem and then curing it, I feel, is a more focused and more effective way of teaching. You cannot teach these kids at the grade level. So fix the problem first so they can do the grade level stuff. And we have to go in their case, we have to go back to the basics, fix the basics, help them read, just like, we do in the early years of literacy. So basic literacy, intermediate literacy, and then advanced literacy. If you jump the levels, of course, they will lose their confidence, both in themselves and in the school system. Doreen, did I answer your question?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a cool question. I see another hand up. Lawrence? All right, I have lots of questions here. Let's see.
Okay, maybe I think we should look at the questions in the chat box. Lawrence has not connected to audio yet, so.
Understanding the content of that piece of writing, could you clarify your question, please? I'm only taking reading questions first.
Okay, I think there's a question in there. What are the basic needs we need to employ when teaching reading? From Prince.
Basic is, as I said, that was Doreen's question. Basic literacy is really, really basic. The sound letter correspondence. And unfortunately, in English, there's no formula. It's not like C is always pronounced as K, right? It changes its pronunciation, but that's the same thing with French also. Am I right? Any French speakers? I feel like pronunciation and word articulation is a big problem in French language also. There is no shortcut, to be honest with you. I mean, if you think I have a magic pill or a magic spell and it'll work that way, no. We have to teach, even in America, when kids come to school having speaking their language for 5 years at home, when they come, they have to start from the basic. The word, you know, car, how is it written? How is it pronounced? How is it spelled? I don't know how many of you have read Halliday. He said a very interesting thing. When I was a student, I would have never analyzed this so much. Reading, writing, not speaking so much, they are trained skills. They are literacies that have to be trained at school, in school, during school. Home is not the right place. I mean, what I mean communicate does not really mean anything when it comes to learning to read and write. Students have to start from all. My internet is unstable. Are you guys with me? Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, just making sure that I'm not talking to myself. Yeah, so the basic is very, very basic is what's the sound? How do you write it? And for as many words as they are, they will have to be aware of spelling sound system. Since there are a lot of questions about pronunciation, I'm just going to include that question here. I think, I don't know how you feel about this. We can have a talk later, but I feel the world is beginning to realize comprehensibility, where comprehension, that people are able to understand what you're saying, is more important than native speaker alignments. So no matter what your pronunciation is, even if it is a little off in terms of how native speakers speak, but you're able to put your message across, you're able to say what you want to say, I think you're good to go. And I don't do this to my students who are ESL learners. They come from different parts of the world. I never correct their pronunciation until I feel that word does not sound like English. That's the only time I correct their pronunciation, because otherwise it's a part of who they are. It's their identity. It makes them different. It makes them special. So try not to fix too much of pronunciation. If you feel like, I get the sound, I know what my kids are saying, it's enough. And that's where the world is going. We don't really respect or follow native speakers standards so much now, which is a good thing, right? The world is changing. There is no pressure on teachers to say, hey, everybody has to sound like an American, or everybody has to sound like a Britisher. Why? Why? There's no requirement like that. So comprehensibility, both in writing and in speech, are far more important than grammatical or sound accuracy. Okay, so I think we dealt with that one thing. Now, coming back to basics in reading, these so literacies have levels. We've already talked about letter correspondence. Then when we know the words, we have to put them in sentences to know the larger meaning. It's a constant training. That's how school curriculums are designed, to take students one by one step along the way. My request, what I have learned from my experience is, I don't really know if you can do this, is not focus so much on test scores just because the grades are really high or the numbers are big or the numbers are small. Don't go by that. They're really deceiving. Test scores are deceiving. You really need to know your students with respect to what they can do and what they cannot do. Identify those problems and work with them. Some may need more scaffolding, more support than others. The brilliant students who are already reading above the grade level, make them your assistants. Use their help. Tell them, come on, we have some students who are falling behind. How can we help them? They can be your, teacher assistants. Forming a classroom where ecosystem is learner driven, I feel you release too much of pressure off your shoulders. Then it's not on you, all of it. You found your little helpers in your class. Okay. Reading has its stages. You cannot skip them. I use this simile for both reading and writing. I'm sure all of us as kids learned to ride a bike, right? Bicycle, cycle.
Yes.
Right. So when a small kid, when the parents are so excited, they buy this kid a brand new jazzy bike and say, here, child, come on, ride it. That bike comes with those extra wheels, right? Those balancing wheels.
The training wheels, yeah.
It's the first time the child is riding a bike. For safety reasons, there's so much that this child has to learn. Well, he cannot or she cannot learn to hold up, what do you call that? The handle, pedal the bike, and balance all at the same time. It's just too much learning. So let's take balancing out of the equation so the child can concentrate on only two skills: how to hold the handle and how to keep moving, right? When the child learns these two skills, is very comfortable on the road, time to remove those extra wheels and the balancing act comes into the picture. That's learning a skill. Reading, writing as skills are no different. As a teacher, you just need to know how many of your kids are ready to remove those extra wheels and can be on their own. It's just a gradual process of learning. So learn through them, learn with them, so that you're connected with your reader. It doesn't matter what skill you are teaching. It doesn't matter. It just applies. What other questions are for me?
I think everyone is agreeing with what we are talking about. How do we teach students to read in high school, since the curriculum in the high school does not give room for basic practice of reading? So we are constrained. You're supposed to teach a certain level of material. And if you decide to use a lower level material because of the scaffolding, you are in trouble because you cannot complete your syllabus before the exam year. So the teacher has to do a balancing act and find a way around that.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah, if you don't have a very strong teacher autonomy in your classrooms or in your school administration, then it's heartbreaking, because those students who've not learned the basic skill will only continue to fall behind and lose total faith in school education system, right? The other thing that comes to my mind is, if even at the higher levels, there are some students who have basic problems. I don't want to say this in a mean way, but we've found that those students could be dyslexic. Does anybody know anything about dyslexia?
Yes.
Yeah, so dyslexia is a problem where it's primarily reading. They cannot see the letters. So if they can't see the letters, they can't tell the sounds. And then the problem just escalates. And we know reading depends on these basic sound letter correspondence. I think every school or administration should identify these students, and teachers become a very important part of that process, because they are with the students. And we should have a system where dyslexic students can be identified earlier than later, and there is a special support system for them. They're not supposed to be looked down on, but there's a different support system. So I don't know if at very advanced levels of high school, some of these students were dyslexic or still continue them. That's another way of looking at these problems. It could be more technical than just proficiency. Just help me identify any other reading related question, and then I will go to writing.
Okay, we have this from Daniel. He says, thanks for the clarification. If the emphasis is on comprehension and not pronunciation, why should language proficiency tests place emphasis on that as part of assessments?
That's $1 million question, Daniel. I would like $1 million to give away, which I don't. And that opens up a Pandora's box. That opens up a can of worms, where our education system is stuck in between these modern ideology, and we have archaic methodologies. But let me ask you something. Are you talking about assessments within Ghana region, or are you saying international assessments like TOEFL, IELTS? Which assessments are we talking about here, so I can answer the question accordingly?
I think he's referring to international tests like IELTS, TOEFL. Yes. Okay.
Thanks. The world has changed there quite a lot. And you will be surprised to know that IELTS or TOEFL do not take away points for international pronunciations. As long as you are clear, as long as you put your thoughts across and the listener is able to understand you, I think your students are good to go. So as far as my knowledge goes, I feel these international assessment agencies have gone in favor of comprehensibility and are adopting that in a more practical way. Some of their speakers, some of their test, what do you call them? Proctors are actually international scholars. So they cannot go with native speaking standards anymore. So Daniel, the world has moved quite far ahead in that respect. I know when I was a young student, I knew IELTS had these crazy standards, which very few people can meet. And we've realized that, nope, that's not important. So I don't think international tests value native speaking pronunciation anymore, but they do value comprehensibility. And the world is more and more embracing it. If you guys are on LinkedIn, I get these posts every day where teachers are saying, today I taught my student to speak his way, but speak with more confidence. Yeah, I think that's where we are.
Okay. And I think we have okay, Madam Faustina asked, students who can read sometimes do not understand what they read, which is a very big challenge. So maybe they can read it, but there's no comprehension.
They are only reading English. Yeah, I know how that feels as a teacher. Because I had a student, and you know why I said these assessment numbers do not matter, is because they cannot capture these individualistic problems that students come with. My daughter, who's just 9 years old, I know she's not there, but she's a lateral thinker. Do you know what a lateral thinker is? Lateral thinker is somebody who's a genius at mathematics, you know, those numbers, they can just count things in their head. They're not very good critical thinkers. And now that's a problem. But it's up to the teacher to make them best at both. You say that, all right, you're born with a lateral thinking skills, great, but I need to make you a critical thinker also. Often the problem with these lateral thinkers are they treat string of sentences as if it was a math formula. And they look at it and say, yeah, I read it, I'm done. So interpreting these sentences or thinking that there is a message in that sentence is something that has to be trained. We got to sit with them and we got to tell them, no, tell me, what did you read? This one sentence that you read in English, what does it mean? I mean, I can read it for myself, but what does it mean? And you have to train them. You have to first help them identifying that what they're doing is not reading. That's just Englishing, or I don't know if I can create a word like that. They're just reading English there. It's not reading. Reading is understanding the message. If they don't understand the message, sorry, they missed the boat. And I don't know if there are any special strategies for that, but that is a real problem for some students who confuse reading English for reading for comprehension. And they'll tell you, I can understand all the words, I know all these words, but still the comprehension is 0 because they've not understood the message. And for these students, relating text, you know, we have to always make these connections. What did he say in the thesis statement? What are the main points? Why is the writer saying this again? Making those connections are the hardest because they are more local readers. They can never be global readers. So you got to hold their hand, go sentence for sentence, and train them to make those connections one by one. It's a
Thank
long
you.
process. It's a hard work. Yeah.
Yes.
I see a hand up.
Yes. Miss Gifty, Emma.
Thank you very much, Doc and colleagues present. I think I agree with you, Doc. All that you have said about our learners reading and not understanding. From my point of view, I also see it from the point that our learners, in Ghana, because of our L1 interference with the English language, is causing, I don't know whether to say much harm than we expected. Because when in Ghana, for instance, our educational policy says that from the early grades, from class 1, basic 1 to 3, we are to use our Ghanaian language as a medium of instruction. And then English is a subject taught, okay? And in Ghana, we have varied range of Ghanaian languages where teachers may not even be a particular native to the said language that we are supposed to use. And then from basic 4 upwards, we use the English as a medium of instruction and then as a subject as well. Then fast forward, you see that a child may read all right, and then he will tell you that I can't find the answer there. When you take the child through the reading, you say, oh, no, it's here. You see, so I see that because of our educational system and our language policies and the influence of the L1 in our L2 learning, in that case, our second language classroom, we are not able to give much to the learners right from beginning. And so when you get to SHS, JHS, where you need to be productive in the language that you have learned from beginning, the production becomes somewhere odd because he couldn't get much from the lower to the upper. And where our syllables or our educational system is much interested in examination oriented, because every teacher is rushing to finish the syllables so that he wouldn't be tagged. And so we rush the children through. At the end of the day, you see that the very concept that he has to get from the beginning, he couldn't get it. And so there is a gap, as Dr. said. And so if we are weighing the problems with reading pertaining to our learners, we can see that our policy is affecting us, our teaching methods and strategies is affecting us, and the learners themselves, what they get from home, however we may put it, that is may have a repercussion on the way they read, and then they can't comprehend, then answer the questions that follow. So that is my thought that I can give. Thank you.
Thank you, Getty. My God, that's a combination of 4 thoughts, just one breath. I could write a book on that. Thank you so much. You did very elaborately describe the problem. And Getty, you'll be surprised that Ghana is not the only country with those kinds of issues, those kinds of problems. But I hate to disagree with you, Getty. It's our first meeting. But you have to forgive me because there are lots of myths out there, and I am a myth buster. I bust myth. That's my second part-time job. You talked about L1 interference. Let's get that thing straightened out first. I think if I took a poll right now, how many teachers do we have? How many participants? We have 49. Wow. If I took a poll right now and I asked you guys, how many of you people think that there is L1 interference in reading or maybe also in writing? I believe more than majority of you will raise your hand and say, all of us, right? That's a common belief, right? But with growing evidence, we know today that ironically, if students are good readers in their first language, that skill is automatically transferred to the second language. Okay. Now, where does the L1 interference come into the picture? There is, okay, this may be my own little bubble that I have created for myself, but I'm from cognitive linguistics field, and my field has been rejecting this theory of language interference for the longest time ever. Okay. Let's understand a little bit about interference and where skills come into the picture. I already said I was not the one who proposed this theory. We have Jim Cummins, whose entire life's work is on identifying why students do not learn in a mainstream education system. And he was the one who said, it's not about which language they are learning in, but if the skills are missing, if holding the bike, learning how to balance. I gave you an example of riding a bike, right? We can't blame the bike if the skill was not learned properly. If you remove those extra wheels before the child learned other skills, that skill might always become a deficit and just, keep becoming a bigger problem, a bigger gap. Okay. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Let's deal with one problem at a time. So we do have evidence that if children can learn very well or know how to read and write, have the literacy skills in their first language, that skill is transferable in their second language. What's the problem with the curriculum is that they introduce this mother language or a local language. It's a great thing. That's how the languages will survive. Otherwise, they will die and there'll be only a few languages battling heads with each other. I love that language policy, but don't do it just for 3 years. Build a certain level of proficiency so that proficiency can be then transferred. It's just too early, or don't do it at all, but do it in a proper way. Okay. I was talking to this guy from Spain, and he said they don't have a perfect curriculum, but their first language goes on till about first 5 years of school. And then from 5th onwards, they start introducing English. But the interesting thing is, in their curriculum, they have to have 1 hour or 2 hours a week devoted to this first language, so that they continue to use that first language in school while English is being slowly introduced. So they have a bilingual language policy. They don't want to give up their mother tongue just because English has become the dominant language. All right. And I think that's a very smart way of doing it. So as teachers, you can always take your feedback. I don't know if the government will listen. They don't always listen, but it's a good thing to write about it, to publish it and say, hey, why do it for 3 years? Do it for a little longer. So at least we can train them on some skills, and those skills are transferable. Okay. Now let's come to this aspect of English being introduced much later. There is no problem. There's no problem. As children at a very young age can learn up to, I don't know how many languages. They're not like adults. We're like stupid when it comes to learning a language. Children learn language the best because they're monkeys. They copy everything. And that's the way to learn languages. We adults try to figure out grammar. We have to know everything about the language. We end up never learning any language. That's why we are bad at learning languages, but those kids are very good. Okay, so I think the curriculum needs to change a little bit, but I will not say, I've had some of the most brilliant students from Africa with so many languages that they speak, that they know, and their writing is flawless. They do have grammar problems, but their writing was really good because their skills that they had learned at school in their first language were taught very well, and that skill was transferable. I had very little work on them. Okay. Examination. Yes, that is a problem. That's a very big problem. And I don't think examinations are suddenly going to disappear in a day or two. They are here to stay until, as a community, we all evolve and we say, hey, these examinations are slowing me down. I could be doing so many other things in my class, but that time is not coming anytime soon. What can we do as teachers? I think we need to change our strategies a bit. Let me ask you guys this question. How many of you allow your students to read on their own with whatever problems they have, and then you have a discussion on the reading? Can I see the hands? How many of you have a discussion with your students on the reading assignment or on the reading? How do I see all the participants? I don't see all the participants. Very few of you, right? That's a problem. Now, and how many of us write the answers for them on the board so that they can copy and go back home and learn those? There's a little bit of problem that we also have as teachers, I have to admit. We don't have to teach for an examination. Inside the classroom, we can build the skills so learners can learn on their own. How? In the examination, I'm sure they will ask questions from the textbook. Am I right? Is that how the examination is designed? There'll be a reading passage from the textbook, and students have to basically answer the same questions that they have learned. As a teacher, what I would do is, tomorrow is Monday. On Monday, just an example. Tomorrow's Monday. They should read this text at home. Are you all with me? My internet is again unstable.
Yes, we are here.
Okay, thank you. So study this at home. Do the best you can. Whatever words are new to you or you don't understand, bring them to class. We will talk about vocabulary first, and then you will help me answer some questions. Homework done. They come to class. You as teachers help them understand some new vocabulary. There's a great discussion. Ask students, do they know these vocabulary items? Then, all right, my first question, what did he do or what did she do? Do we do this in the class? I don't think so, right? So I feel like we got to flip the classroom around and have them do the comprehension. They will struggle the first few months, but eventually you will set the expectations right for them. You will not read for them, but you will read with them. Okay? This is how we teach our students, even though our university program is very small, you know. I wish it was longer, like you have one whole school year with them. Can you imagine the difference you can make to them? I mean, even if it is 40 minutes a day, you can take up different skills on different weeks or different months. You don't have to teach for the examination or to the examination. You're the master in the classroom. You can do whatever, however you want to build those skills. Ultimately, they would have learned what the lesson is all about. They would know answers to all the questions. Not only know that, they would become independent readers. So I think as teachers, we do blame a lot on the system. And I know system is not right. we don't have a lot of freedom. But I think one day, if we wake up and ask ourselves, how much freedom do I have, and use that freedom judiciously, we can make a lot of difference in our classroom. And for that, my last point is, all of us need training, continuous training. All of us need to first identify, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Not that's a wrong question. What is it that, how can I do it better? How can I do this thing or teach this skill better? Now, training does not only mean come to the conference room or come to conference halls and attend training, but reading, asking your friends, forming a community that Ebenezer, for example, has done. I think that is the purpose, is to get together, learn from each other, ask each other, hey, I'm doing it this way. Are you doing it this way too? Oh, your strategy is better than mine. All right, let me see how I can use that. As teachers, we are first learners, lifelong learners. If we cease to be learners, I think we as teachers are doing a terrible job. Getty, that was an awesome thought. Thank you so much. I got to talk so much on it. Don't hate me for disagreeing with you on certain parts. What's the other question? I see 2 hands up. Daniel.
Yeah, hello. So good afternoon to Doc and everybody in this meeting. I think I've got the opportunity to come for my $1 million. All right. So thanks for the submission and the clarity given on the issues raised. Going into comprehension again, I personally think that there's also a problem when it comes to comprehension. Why am I saying this? I've realized that most of our learners have challenge when it comes to higher order questions that demand that students do some inferences, students do some comparison and contrasting, and present their views on subjects. But when it comes to the factual questions and all that, it's quite easy for them. And I think this lends itself into writing. You give them a topic and you ask them to write. You then see some of these challenges because they are not able to do the higher order thinking questions that come in the comprehension aspect. So I'll be very glad if you can delve a little to touch on some strategies for we teachers to help our learners develop some of these skills. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Daniel. I think I've already partly answered that question. Critical thinking skills, or as they know, higher order thinking skills today. I think the only way to teach them is to have students think for themselves, and discussion is the best way. It's not a new method, the dialoguing method or the discussion a new method, but you got to flip the table around to stop thinking for them first. It will be very hard in the beginning, but I think across the world, that's how critical thinking skills are developed. Or you can give them a question and have them think about it and write about it. And that will be a good way to combine reading and writing. You know, you very well identified that if they're not able to think critically, the advanced writing, where they will have to use their own thought process and do the research work, it's not going to help them. Finding a mechanism of overlapping these writing skills is a way to go. So I'll give you an example of how I talked about it a little bit, go over it again. I assign the reading as homework. Okay, I never do reading in class, and I never have students read aloud. I don't want to do that. That's not a part of reading. That's a part of pronunciation alignment. I don't know why we're still doing it. So reading for me is the ability to comprehend everything. I see reading as a jigsaw puzzle. If any piece of the comprehension is missing, the picture is not complete. To build that skill, allow the student some time to read at home. They can take anybody's help at home, that's fine. But my students have to do it on their own. Read at home, figure things out. You can also give them a list of questions to think about. They don't have to write anything. They just have to think about it. Now, if they have these list of questions, you know, these questions are like guiding stars. When they read on their own without the questions, then somebody asked me, somebody had this problem that they just read English. That's how they'll end up being. They'll think, oh, I read the text, I read English, and I am done. But if you have those list of questions and they're trying to answer those questions for themselves when they're reading on their own, they'll be like, you know what? I don't know the answer to this question. Let me go back and read it again. They'll probably read certain sections more than one time. Those questions are enabling them to build those connections on their own, which otherwise they will never make, because they will only read English and come back to you and say, teacher, I spent 45 minutes reading this text. So questions are very important. I don't know what your experience with the textbook questions are, but I hate the textbook questions. So I make my own questions, but that I have to understand the passage very well to be able to generate those good higher order comprehension skill questions, right? 1 or 2 questions are good enough. Come to class, we all meet together. First, I ask some basic questions like the detail questions, which gives me an impression, all right, all of them did read, okay? Higher order comprehension questions are the trickiest to answer. So I believe students who spend a genuine amount of time figuring that out would be able to have some responses for you. And that's where you come into the picture. You can write down all the responses you get from students and have students look at those responses, and some of them will say, no, I don't think this point belongs here. And you're learning as a community, right? You're not learning for them, they're learning together. And then you again come into the picture. If you think you don't get the right answer, then is your last chance. You tell them where the answer was and how did you figure out the answer? What connections did you make? Some of them will get it. I feel most of them will get it. Am I right? It's not an easy way. It's not a shortcut, but don't complain about our students' lack of comprehension if we do not give them a chance to comprehend for themselves first. The problem is we've been spoon feeding them and then we complain they can't even hold a spoon for themselves. Of course, of course they don't. Okay, what's the next question? Peter?
I have wanted to ask a question, but I think I've got no clarity. I'm okay.
Thank you. Nicholas?
Please, thank you. Okay, with regards to the comprehension questions, can we totally ignore the textbook questions and use our own questions as teachers?
No, if there are good questions, if you think the textbook questions are doing justice to the text, you know, they're asking the right kind of question. It can be a combination of your questions and the textbook questions. but often I don't know what textbook you use, but I am really disappointed with the textbook that they publish here. They don't ask good questions, probably because they're in a hurry to publish the book and get their name out there and get their money. But as teachers, you can fill in the blanks. You can create more questions. Or if you think, I like these 3 questions from the textbook, but then I can make few more questions. Don't ask too many basic questions, okay? It should be a combination of all kinds of questions. I think if you're looking at basic comprehension, whether your students have read the text, then detail-oriented questions are good enough. But if you really want to see how deeply they have read, then those higher level, higher order skill questions are very important. So if you have them in the textbook, great. If you don't have them, you can throw in your own questions. You can have a combination, best of both worlds, as we say. Okay, can we switch to writing? Any questions for writing? I believe some of you are typing your questions on writing, but I can take this Emmanuel's question in the meantime. Emmanuel, sometimes the problem is to do with how students can read individual words in the passage assigned and understand them. What do you mean? Could you clarify, Emmanuel? Nicholas, do you have another question?
To the pronunciation of words. To me, if we are teachers and we are teaching reading or pronunciation of words, then it's better that we teach the correct pronunciation of words. We should not just allow the student to pronounce the words anyhow or any way they want it. So the problem all lies on how to teach the sounds and teach them the rules with regards to pronunciation. It will also help them to know how to spell and how to pronounce words correctly. So in Ghana here, the basic problem is spelling. You can give even a child in grade 6, grade 4 will fail to spell just simple word because of lack of phonology. So to me, I believe that right from the onset, the children should have those phonological experience or that training in order to equip them so that they'll be able to spell and pronounce words correctly.
Yeah, that's how we teach in the United States also. It is the phonemic awareness. You have to build the phonemic awareness because it works both ways. It works both in terms of identifying the word and spelling out the word. Yeah, I agree with you. Phonemic awareness is very important.
Okay, madam, please, thank you. Thank you for the answer. Thank you.
Isa? Oh. Any questions on writing, guys? No questions on writing? You're breaking my heart. Oh no, that's one of my favorite aspects of teaching. How many of your students like to write? Daniel, go ahead.
All right, thank you again. Yes, I think this time it's on the subject of writing. I have this colleague who believes that he believes in a trial and error approach to teaching writing. So not necessarily teaching children maybe how they should write, maybe from top to bottom, but allows them to just freely express themselves, given maybe on a particular topic they write. Then you check and then fill in the gaps, try to see which ones are not very relevant, take them out, and what they can do to improve. As compared to a traditional approach, maybe you teach them the outline or the method and what really, following that method, what they can also write. From your experience and expertise, what would you advise that teachers look to? Thank you.
Yeah, Daniel, I believe you will, after all, no matter when, you will get that 1 million from me. You're very adamant. You're a very adamant man. You're determined to get that $1 million from me. Again, a very good question. And I think your colleague's strategy is a very good strategy. I would not call it a trial and error method. I would call it a brainstorming approach. Remember, I said writing is a very abstract skill. You are doing a lot of cognitive and linguistic activities all at the same time. The problem with writing, the other problem with writing, it has many problems. The other problem with writing is you're writing for someone and you have to get it all right in one go. So you have to keep your readers in mind. There's no conversation. A reader will never come back to you and ask you for a clarification question, right? So writing is removed from reality. It's not in time, okay? So half of the time, half of the battle the students have is, why am I writing? Who am I writing for? Right? And that struggle is so real. That struggle wastes a lot of time and is demotivating. But if your colleague has figured out this little genius technique, then let me tell you that it is a very good technique. Many good writers themselves who are not very sure about their thoughts, who are not really sure about the direction in which they want to take their writing, do that kind of brainstorming. They just allow their brain to flow on paper without worrying about, am I going outside the topic? Are my points relevant? Am I still on the topic? Just let it flow. When your mind stops working, your pen should stop. Take a little break, make a coffee, drink tea, whatever you want, come back to it and look at your work. You will look at it from a very fresh perspective. And as a writer, you're also evolving as a critical writer, a reflective writer who is able to find mistakes, not mistakes only, but relevant or irrelevance of content, and becoming an independent writer. That's a great strategy. And that's how we should teach our students. Give them a topic. Don't put any constraints on them. Don't tell them what they are going to be learning for the examination. That's much later. Allow them to write first. It's a very hard skill. If you put too much conditions, they will never want to write. Or they'll just do a shoddy job and say, here, in your face, go deal with it. Right? Ebenezer can identify, apparently he's smiling. He's like, yeah, I know, that happens to me quite a lot. So take it very slow. Don't put any standards on them. Don't put any high level achievement goals. Say, write what comes to your mind, and then we will work on it together. Help them identify relevant versus irrelevant ideas. Help them go back to the topic. Write the topic in bold and black on top of their whatever notebook or your Blackboard and say, constantly tally every idea to the title, to the topic. Ask yourself, am I on topic? Am I not on topic? That's how you build a skill. Daniel is a star of the show. I'm just talking. He came with a really good question. You should have an award for him. All right. Any other questions on writing? No, I think we're done. Do I have any questions in the chat?
Yes, we have one from Madame Esther. What should we look out for when assessing writing?
What should we look out for when?
Assessing writing.
Oh, I hate assessing writing. I don't know. What are your learning objectives? Do you mean assessment for grades, or do you mean assessment for further training? I only assess for further training. I don't assess for grades. So you and I come from different perspectives.
Okay, Madam Esther, you've been unmuted, so you can use the microphone.
All right, thank you very much. In Ghana, when we are assessing students, we usually concentrate on grades. So if we are to do that, what are we supposed to look out for? So what we are saying, we have certain things we have to concentrate on and other things we have to somehow ignore when we are talking about proficiency. So share your experience. What would you advise us to do?
Okay, she was asking whether there are things we have to concentrate on, we have to focus our attention on, and as to whether there are other things we have to, in a way, ignore. What are some of those things you would like to talk about?
Okay. It depends on your level. It depends on your Esther. Do you teach younger kids? Do you teach postgraduate students? If you teach younger kids, then I think just leave them alone. Don't correct anything other than probably a little bit of grammar if you think it's crazy grammar. Okay, just let them write and encourage them and say, wow, great. When I was your age, I did not write like that. You know, just leave them alone. Don't set any standards for them, because if you put too much requirements, they will lose their interest in writing. For intermediate level, I would say for middle school age level students, that's when you should start bringing in standardization things. Again, free writing is a great idea, but if they're bored of it, then I think you can say, let's learn to write in a very coherent paragraph. What does coherence mean? So coherence can be your point of objective. You know, take one thing at a time, work on it before you move on to the next thing. For me as a writer, for me as a teacher of writing, also because I teach a very advanced level, the highest at the IELP Temple University, if my students have not learned coherence, I lose my head. So coherence is very important for me. Not so much the correctness of grammar, because I know there are ESL students and their grammar is not perfect. So I don't take away points for simple, not so very advanced grammar mistakes. For example, wrong preposition, wrong article, but I do take away points if the comma is used in place of a period. That's basic English. They should know it by then. So as a teacher, you need to gauge at what level at what stage of writing are they? Is this a skill that they have already learned? Then you can, you know, penalize them for that. But if it is a skill that they're still developing and it's not mature enough, try to nurture it before you include it in your grades. Okay, so the assessment and pedagogy does not have to have one-to-one correspondence. Just because you are teaching it in the class does not mean it has to be on the test. No, you're teaching it to make it a better skill. If you put it in the test, that's mean. Right? So I think we were talking about differentiation. We have to also make a differentiation between what are the skills that I can grade them for, and what are the skills they're still learning. I cannot, it's really too early to grade them on. I will grade them on the next session or later session, okay? Again, there are so many skills in writing. Are you looking at language? Are you looking at cognition? There's also meta-language and metacognition. I think we should talk about that in greater detail some other time. But evaluation on principle does not need to include everything that they are still learning or you're still teaching them. Take only skills, fewer skills, so you can focus on them and also be able to give them feedback. Not just say, you got 2 out of 10, go work on it. No, you're the teacher. Why did you get 2 out of 10? What can I do better? I think if you tested fewer skills, you will be in better control of their learning. Anything else? Did I miss anything?
Hello.
Yep.
Yes. Mustafa posted, you posited that teachers should focus on the comprehension of the text, but not the pronunciation. My question is, how about non-native speakers who cannot pronounce words properly? Should we still concentrate on their understanding of the text?
That's a good question too. So are we asking a question about comprehension versus pronunciation, or did I get it wrong?
Yeah, he's okay. We were saying comprehension, well, the teacher's focus should be comprehension. But I think he is asking, what about the non-native speaker whose pronunciation is a problem? I think it will affect comprehension. So how do we handle that one?
You can always correct the pronunciation. There's no problem with that, just like we correct grammar, otherwise in terms of feedback. But I wasn't saying do not correct pronunciation. I'm just saying don't follow the standard English pattern. If the word is not clear, you can always say that's not how we pronounce the word. We pronounce the word this way. But I'm just saying don't make pronunciation. Does pronunciation or wrong pronunciation of a word affect comprehension? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah. So wherever possible, do inform students that the correct word is this, and this word has another pronunciation or some other word that sounds similar to this pronunciation and means completely different. Yeah, that could be a part of reading. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I think there are no further questions in the chat room.
Okay.
Is there anyone who would like to ask the question? Please, your hand.
I think there were more questions on reading than on writing, which has disappointed me, but it's okay. Next time we'll talk more on writing. Writing is my, I don't know, it's my dominant skill. I can breathe writing. It's a very fascinating skill. I love it. Someday we will talk about writing in greater detail. That's my promise. Nicholas. Nicholas, your hand is up. Go ahead.
All right. Once you are more advanced, once you are more abreast with writing, you'll fix a date for us so that you'll be able to teach us the method in writing, because most of the students here in Ghana don't normally know the rules. So they write, maybe they deviate. As when you give them the question, they deviate. So next time you fix a date so that you teach us the rules or the method involved in writing.
Let's do that. Let's do that. I like it. We will do that. So you want me to work on a topic. So the topic has to be something to do with methodology, about how to make students focus on a topic and stay within the topic. Am I right? Is that the ask?
Yes, please.
Yes, boss. I will. Yes, I will do that. I will do that.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Thanks for that.
Which area should teachers focus on if the objective is to get learners to become creative writing? Fiction or non-fiction? What did you say? Oh, creative writing is fiction. Creative writing is fiction, Danielle. Non-fiction is the boring writing, is the straightforward, boring, flavorless writing. I think there's one more. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Discussion is a way of teaching writing. What other methods can be used for writing? Writing is a very independent task. I think we adopt process-based method in writing, and that's one of the most successful methods. But then I don't want you to look at writing only in one aspect. Abenazir, can I share my screen? Do I have? Oh yeah, I can. So let me know when you can see my screen. I think you can now.
Okay.
Writing can be divided into two broad categories. Do you know anything about this? So this is most of what we do in, sorry. This is most of what we do in the school curriculum, I would say from K to 8 or 9. Most of the school curriculums across the world are based on learning to write, where we teach mechanics and the coherence and cohesion and idea unity. Those are just different aspects of writing. When we come to writing to learn, this is a more advanced kind of writing. It's more to do with research writing, summary writing, and other things. I have an idea, next time when I come and meet you guys, maybe I can present on this aspect and build on it a little bit more. But in both of these cases, it's like two different worlds. The approaches are different, the methodologies are different, because the focus is different, because the objectives are different. Everything changes. So it's not very easy for me to, Vuresh, is that how you pronounce your name? I don't know if I messed up your name, but it's not very easy to say what's the right method to teach writing. What writing are you doing? And what's your focus? What are you trying to build? I think that should be that is something I can bring next time. You guys gave me ideas. Thank you. It was wonderful chatting with you. If there are no questions. Daniel, I don't understand your question. Guys, can you hear me? Am I still with you?
Yes,
thank
we
God.
can hear you.
Oh my God, I thought I because somebody said she's frozen. I was like, what? Daniel, I had a student complain of writer's block in an examination where the question was fiction. Should that be considered as a legitimate reason against scoring rubric or band? What does that mean? Can anybody help me understand Daniel's point?
Hi, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, what actually I'm trying to put across is that a learner was expected to write a question which was kind of a fiction in an exam, but at the point the learner stopped with the excuse that she had writer's block, and that is to simply say she cannot produce ideas, and it's like she's stuck. Now, in your submission you made earlier with the objective of allowing them to write, allow the ideas to flow, and then that as a way of helping them to develop the writing skill and the creativity that is needed. Now, here is an exam, and this happens to a child. And you're also going to mark with a scoring rubric. What then do you do? Are you going to put the rubric aside and then score maybe out of your benevolence, or how do you go about it? Yes, thank you. That's my little question.
I had lost my connection, so I didn't hear the first part of your question. Could you please repeat it?
Okay, the whole show.
Sorry.
Okay, right. I was saying that Elena, who was supposed to write some sort of fiction in an exam, okay, and at a point, she just called my attention and said, okay, I have writer's block. And that is simply to say that I'm stuck, my ideas are like exhausted, I can't think again. And yes, it's creative work, so some of these things are expected, but this is an exam. So I'm asking that, should that be a legitimate reason why, if you're also scoring using a rubric, you would put the rubric aside and say that, okay, this is a legitimate reason or an excuse, and then consider maybe based on your assessment of the child, and then score. That is my little question. Thank you.
I will, because writer's block is very real. I have a writer's block like 10 hours in 24 hours. I can't just raise the pen and start writing any day. It is real. it is possible that she has a mental block, unless she does it again and again. And isn't that really what makes it hard, that you can't just sit down and hope to get all the ideas at one time? No. Sometimes I struggle with, we need to reflect on us as a writer first. What are the I feel most challenged about, and that will help us understand the kid's world or the child's world. I suffer from all these problems that our students often complain about. I do know the writer's block is real, and I would give her another chance. Some other day, I would tell her, come prepared, come prepared, think about it, come warmed up, because this would be your last chance. So I think, yeah, it is. It's a good thing to give her another chance. Daniel, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, is it another chance based on the same topic? A different topic. Yeah. So on that topic, if writer's block should happen again, would you give another chance?
No, I would not, because I think if a child is genuinely not able to read, Daniel, then you need to figure out what's going on with her. It could be real, I would not dismiss it just that lightly. But I would also not, because I want to make sure that she doesn't take advantage of my pardons, or other students don't take advantage of that. So it's important to know what kind of mental block she's talking about and why this mental block is just around the examination. And that's why I said those instructions to her are important. You tell her, you make sure you tell her, and she understands this, that you've given her a chance just this one time, but you are not going to make it an exception next time.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and she has to come prepared. She has to think about some ideas, there should be some motivation. She should come motivated, but do change the topic.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Because then it's not fair. It's not fair that you already knew the topic, whereas other students had to do it right there in the class. Then it's not fair. Then your assessment is skewed, and you don't want that to happen.
Well, I'm sure they are done with all the questions. Hello, Madam Doreen. Do we have any other question in the chat box?
No other questions. Is there anyone who would like to ask a last minute question?
Everybody wants to celebrate the weekend. We're done. Bye-bye.
All right. If we don't have any other question in the chat box, then we would like to bring the session to an end, and we can do that without saying a big thank you to Dr. Manisha for coming. It's been an awesome time with you. It's been so insightful. We thank you so much for making time out of your busy schedules to be with us. And we believe that in our next session, which you are actually going to treat the subject of writing, it's going to be very awesome. It's going to be insightful. We thank you so much. It's been great having you here. And thank you all too for coming. But before we go, let me share my screen, and in just a minute, and we'll be out of here.
Thank you all for your beautiful, beautiful words, for asking amazing questions. Oh, thank you.
All right, so here we go. So we have this certificate of recognition going to Dr. Manisha for generously sharing her time, efforts, and expertise as the resource speaker of IELTS Ghana's webinar on reading and writing, awarded this 4th day of March 2023 via Zoom. And this certificate is signed by Dr. Neil Arvalo Alcantara, the president of IELTS International, Dr. Glenn Parilla Cortizano, the academic director of IELTS, Ms. Fati Isi for the president of IELTS Ghana, Mr. Jacob, the vice president, Mr. Alfred, the academic director, and yours truly, Ebenezer. Thank you so much, Dr. Manisha. And to our dear participants, we have this certificate of participation going to all our participants. Please do well to fill in the attendance and evaluation form that has been shared in the chat box before you leave this section. So we have this certificate going to all dear participants. Thank you all for coming. And so we have 3 events, one in March, and then we have 2 more in April. We've had the first one, which is discussion on reading and writing with Dr. Manisha. And on March 11th, we have one, improving students' performance in English language through creative pedagogical skills. On April 1, we have another session, helping low-level students speak by adapting traditional textbook exercises. April 22, we have activities to boost engagement. And I'm going to talk about this and tell you who our speakers are in our next session. Thank you so much for coming.
Bye, everyone. Have a good one.
All right. Have a good day, have a good evening, and a good morning, wherever you are. Thank you.